The morning sun cast long shadows across the NATO training facility in Poland as Captain Sarah Raven Martinez stepped off the transport truck. Her combat boots hit the gravel with a solid thud that seemed to announce her arrival to the entire camp. Around her, soldiers from 12 different countries were unloading their gear, speaking in a mixture of languages that created a constant buzz of conversation. Sarah adjusted her tactical vest and grabbed her duffel bag from the truck bed. The weight of it reminded her of the long journey that had brought her here, from a small town in Texas where nobody believed a girl could make it in the military, to becoming one of the most decorated snipers in the U.S. Army. Now, at 28, she was here for the most prestigious international training exercise of her career. "Hey, look what we got here," came a voice with a thick German accent. Sarah turned to see a tall, blonde soldier approaching with two others flanking him. The name tape on his uniform read Weber. His eyes swept over her with obvious skepticism. "They're sending girls to play soldier now." Sarah didn't respond immediately. She'd heard variations of this same comment countless times throughout her military career. Instead, she continued organizing her gear with practiced efficiency, her movements precise and controlled. "I'm talking to you, sweetheart," Weber continued, stepping closer. "This isn't summer camp. Real soldiers train here." The other soldiers nearby had started to take notice. Some stopped their conversations to watch, while others pretended not to see but kept stealing glances. Sarah could feel the weight of their attention, the familiar sensation of being the outsider, the one who had to prove herself all over again. "Captain Martinez," she said finally, turning to face Weber directly. Her voice was steady, professional. "And I'm here for the same reason you are, to train." Weber laughed, a sound that carried more mockery than humor. "Captain, what did you do? Sleep your way to those bars." The comment hit the air like a physical blow. Several soldiers nearby shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke up. Sarah felt the familiar fire rising in her chest, the same anger that had driven her through every challenge, every doubt, every person who told her she didn't belong. "Sergeant Weber," came a new voice, crisp and authoritative. A British officer approached, his uniform bearing the insignia of a major. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem, sir," Weber replied, though his smirk remained. "Just welcoming our American colleague." Major Thompson's eyes moved between Weber and Sarah. "Captain Martinez, I presume?" "I'm Major Thompson, exercise coordinator. Welcome to exercise Iron Eagle." "Thank you, sir," Sarah replied, relieved for the intervention. "Sergeant Weber, I believe your unit has equipment to prep. I suggest you attend to it." Weber's smirk faded slightly. "Yes, sir." He shot one more look at Sarah before walking away, his companions following. As the crowd dispersed, Major Thompson turned back to Sarah. "I've reviewed your file, Captain. Impressive record. 2 tours in Afghanistan, expert marksman qualification, and that business in Kandahar last year." He paused, studying her face. "That was exceptional work. Just doing my job, sir." Well, your reputation precedes you, though I suspect not everyone here will appreciate what that means." He gestured toward the main complex. "Your quarters are in Building C, Room 24. First briefing is at 1,400 hours." As Thompson walked away, Sarah gathered her gear and headed toward the barracks. The facility was impressive, modern buildings arranged around a central parade ground, with training areas and ranges stretching beyond. Flags from NATO member countries flew in neat rows along the main walkway. The interior of Building C was Spartan but clean, military efficiency at its finest. Sarah found room 24 and used her key card to enter. The space was small but adequate: a single bed, a desk, a locker, and a small window that looked out over one of the training areas. She began unpacking her gear with a methodical precision that had become second nature. Each item had its place, each piece of equipment was checked and rechecked. As she hung her uniforms in a locker, her fingers brushed against the sleeve of her PT shirt, feeling the slight raised texture of the tattoo beneath the fabric. The Ghost Hawk. She'd gotten it 2 years ago, after the mission that had changed everything. Most people never saw it. It was positioned on her upper arm where regulation uniforms kept it covered. But those who did see it, those who knew what it meant, understood immediately what kind of soldier they were dealing with. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. The door opened to reveal a young soldier, probably early 20s, with corporal stripes on his uniform. His name tape read Kowalski, and his accent when he spoke was distinctly Polish. "Captain Martinez? I'm Corporal Kowalski, your assigned liaison. I'm here to show you around the facility and answer any questions you might have." "Thank you, Corporal. Call me Sarah when we're not in formal settings." Kowalski smiled. "Thank you, ma'am. I have to say, it's an honor to meet you. Your reputation in sniper circles is, well, it's legendary." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Is it now?" "Yes, ma'am. The shot you made in Kandahar, 1,847 meters in high wind, saved an entire platoon. That's the kind of precision most of us only dream about." It was refreshing to meet someone who knew her for her skills rather than seeing her as an oddity. "You're a marksman yourself?" "Trying to be, ma'am. I'm here hoping to learn from the best." As they left her room and began walking through the facility, Kowalski proved to be an enthusiastic guide. He showed her the mess hall, the briefing rooms, the medical facility, and the various training areas. The compound was larger than it had appeared from outside, with specialized areas for different types of combat training. "This is the main range," Kowalski said as they approached a series of firing positions. "Goes out to 1,200 meters. There's also an urban warfare training area, a close-quarters combat facility, and a survival training zone in the forest beyond." Sarah nodded, taking mental notes. "What about the other participants? How many countries are represented?" 12 total. US, UK, Germany, France, Poland, Canada, Norway, Netherlands, Denmark, Belgium, Czech Republic, and Estonia. About 60 soldiers total, all supposed to be elite units from their respective countries. "Supposed to be?" Kowalski grinned. "Well, some are more elite than others, if you know what I mean. Some countries sent their best. Others sent whoever was available." They continued the tour, passing groups of soldiers engaged in various activities. Sarah noticed the way conversations seemed to pause when she walked by, the way eyes followed her movement. She was used to it, but it never stopped being exhausting. "Don't mind them," Kowalski said quietly, noticing her observation. "By the end of this exercise, they'll know what you're capable of." "And what makes you so confident?" "Because I've done my homework, ma'am. I know about Kandahar, about the hostage rescue in Baghdad, about the convoy ambush where you held off an entire insurgent cell while your unit evacuated wounded. Word gets around in our community." Sarah appreciated his confidence, even if she wasn't sure it was entirely warranted. Reputation was one thing, but every new situation was a chance for that reputation to be destroyed. They finished the tour at the mess hall, which was bustling with activity as soldiers prepared for lunch. The noise level dropped noticeably as they entered, and Sarah could feel dozens of pairs of eyes tracking her movement. "Captain Martinez," came a familiar voice. She turned to see Weber approaching with several other soldiers. "How are you settling in?" "Fine, thank you." Good. You know, some of us were discussing the shooting competition that's scheduled for tomorrow. Precision rifle, long range. Should be interesting to see how everyone stacks up." The way he said it made it clear this wasn't just casual conversation. He was issuing a challenge. "I'm sure it will be," Sarah replied evenly. "Of course, not everyone here has experience with real combat shooting. Some of us have been in actual firefights, where the targets shoot back." Weber's companions chuckled. "Makes a difference, you know." Sarah felt Kowalski tense beside her, but she remained calm. "I imagine it does. Well, should be educational for everyone involved. See you on the range, Captain." As Weber and his group moved away, Kowalski shook his head. "That guy's been causing trouble since day one. Thinks because he served in Mali, he's some kind of combat hero. And what do you think? I think he's about to learn a very expensive lesson." Sarah couldn't help but smile at that. "We'll see." They got their food and found seats at a table near the window. The meal was standard military fare, adequate nutrition, minimal flavor. As they ate, Kowalski filled her in on the other participants, pointing out various soldiers and giving brief backgrounds. "That's Captain Du Bois from France," he said, gesturing toward a dark-haired woman in animated conversation with several other soldiers. "Excellent tactical mind. Serve in the Foreign Legion before transferring to regular army. Very respected. And over there, Lieutenant Hansen from Denmark. Special Forces demolitions expert. Word is he can blow up anything or nothing, depending on what the situation calls for." Sarah nodded, cataloging the information. In an environment like this, understanding the players was almost as important as understanding the game. After lunch, they made their way to the first briefing. The conference room was filled with soldiers from all the participating countries, creating a United Nations of military uniforms and languages. Sarah found a seat toward the back, preferring to observe rather than draw attention. Major Thompson took the podium as conversations gradually died down. "Gentlemen and ladies, welcome to Exercise Iron Eagle. Over the next 2 weeks, you'll participate in a series of training scenarios designed to test individual skills, unit cohesion, and international cooperation." He clicked a remote, and a large screen behind him displayed a schedule of events. "Tomorrow, we begin with individual skills assessments, marksmanship, physical fitness, tactical knowledge. Following that, we'll move into small unit exercises, then larger combined operations." Sarah studied the schedule, noting the various competitions and exercises. The marksmanship test was indeed first, followed by an obstacle course, a written tactical exam, and a combat simulation. "The purpose of this exercise is not to determine winners and losers," Thompson continued, "but to share knowledge and build relationships that will serve us well in future operations. That said, performance will be noted and reported to your respective commands." After the briefing, soldiers began breaking into national groups, discussing strategies and preparations. Sarah found herself alone, which wasn't entirely unexpected. She was the only American participant, a fact that seemed to emphasize her outsider status. "Captain Martinez?" She turned to see a tall, lean soldier approaching. His uniform bore Canadian insignia and the name tape Morrison. "Captain Jack Morrison, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. Mind if I join you?" "Please," Sarah replied, grateful for the friendly approach. "I have to say, I'm looking forward to watching you shoot tomorrow. Your reputation has reached even the Canadian sniper community." "Seems my reputation has reached a lot of places." Morrison smiled. "In our line of work, word travels fast when someone does something exceptional. That Kandahar shot is already being used as a case study at our sniper school." They talked for several minutes, discussing training methods and experiences. Morrison proved to be knowledgeable and professional, a welcome contrast to some of the other interactions she'd had. "Can I ask you something?" Morrison said as their conversation wound down. "Sure. How do you handle it? Being the only woman in situations like this? The constant need to prove yourself." Sarah considered the question. It wasn't one she was often asked directly. "You develop thick skin. You focus on the mission. And you remember that your skills speak louder than their doubts." "Good advice. I have a daughter back home who wants to join the military. I hope she has half your determination." As the evening progressed, Sarah returned to her room to prepare for the next day. She cleaned her rifle with meticulous care, checking every component, every adjustment. The weapon was a custom-built M24, modified to her exact specifications. It had been with her through 3 deployments and countless training exercises. As she worked, her mind wandered to the events that had led her here. Growing up in a small Texas town where the biggest excitement was Friday night football games, she'd never imagined herself in places like this. Her father had been a mechanic, her mother a teacher. They'd been supportive, but bewildered when she announced her intention to join the Army. The early years had been brutal. Basic training, advanced individual training, constant challenges to her presence and her capabilities. She considered quitting dozens of times, but something inside her refused to give up. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was genuine calling, but she'd pushed through every obstacle. The breakthrough had come during her first deployment to Afghanistan. Her unit had been pinned down by enemy fire, and the sniper who was supposed to provide overwatch had been wounded. Sarah had grabbed the rifle and made a shot that saved her squad mates' lives. From that moment, she found her calling. But it was the mission in Kandahar that had truly changed everything. Intelligence had located a high-value target in a compound surrounded by civilian buildings. Traditional approaches were too risky, but someone needed to take out the target before he could escape. The shot required precision at extreme range in difficult conditions. Sarah had volunteered for the mission, despite doubts from her command. The target was 1,847 meters away, nearly a mile and a quarter. Wind was gusting unpredictably, and she had only one chance. Missing would alert the target and compromise the entire operation. She'd taken a shot just as the sun was setting, accounting for wind drift, temperature, humidity, and the slight downward angle. The bullet had traveled for over 2 seconds before finding its mark. The mission had been a complete success, and Sarah's reputation had been cemented. A soft knock on her door interrupted her memories. "Come in," she called. Kowalski entered, carrying a cup of coffee. "Thought you might want this. Big day tomorrow." "Thanks." She accepted the coffee gratefully. "Tell me something, Kowalski. What do you think is really going on here?" "What do you mean? This exercise, is it really about international cooperation, or is it about something else?" Kowalski considered the question. "Both, I think. Yes, it's about building relationships, but it's also about identifying the best of the best. Word is that there might be opportunities coming up, special assignments, joint operations. This could be an audition as much as training." Sarah nodded. That made sense. The military was always looking for exceptional personnel for specialized missions. "Can I ask you something?" Kowalski said. "Go ahead." "The tattoo. I've heard rumors about a ghost hawk tattoo. Is it true?" Sarah set down her coffee and looked at him carefully. "Where did you hear that?" "Military channels. Stories about a sniper with a ghost hawk tattoo who's done things that sound impossible. Shots that shouldn't be makeable. Missions that shouldn't be survivable." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. The ghost hawk wasn't something she talked about casually. It represented more than just her military service. It represented a level of commitment and capability that few understood. "Let me ask you something, Kowalski. What do you know about Operation Ghost Hawk?" His eyes widened slightly. "It's classified, way above my clearance level." "Then you understand why I can't discuss certain things." He nodded, but she could see the curiosity burning in his eyes. "I understand. Well, if even half the stories are true, tomorrow's competition is going to be very educational for some people." After Kowalski left, Sarah finished preparing her equipment and tried to get some rest. But sleep came slowly, her mind replaying the day's events and anticipating what was to come. She thought about Weber's challenges, about the looks and whispered comments, about the weight of expectation. Tomorrow would be her first chance to show these soldiers what she was capable of. But more than that, it would be her chance to honor the memory of the teammates she'd lost, the missions she'd completed, and the trust that had been placed in her. The ghost hawk tattoo hidden beneath her sleeve seemed to pulse with warmth, a reminder of the oath she'd taken and the standard she'd set for herself. Tomorrow, she would show them exactly what that standard meant. As she finally drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of the rifle range, of the familiar weight of her weapon, and of the moment when all the doubt and skepticism would be silenced by the simple truth of where her bullets landed. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. Dawn came early at the NATO facility, announced by the sharp blast of reveille echoing across the compound. Sarah was already awake, had been for an hour, going through her morning routine with a methodical precision that had become second nature over years of military service. Physical training, equipment check, mental preparation, the ritual was as much about psychological readiness as physical preparation. The mess hall buzzed with nervous energy as soldiers from 12 nations gathered for breakfast. Conversations were muted, the usual military banter replaced by the focused intensity that preceded competition. Sarah moved through the serving line, selecting fuel rather than food, oatmeal, fruit, coffee, simple carbohydrates, and caffeine, nothing that would affect her stability or focus. She found an empty table near the window and ate in silence, watching the sun climb higher over the training ranges. Other soldiers kept glancing in her direction, some with curiosity, others with obvious skepticism. Weber sat with his usual group, speaking in animated German, occasionally gesturing in her direction. Their laughter carried an edge of mockery that needed no translation. "Mind if I sit?" Captain Morrison appeared beside her table, breakfast tray in hand. "Please." Morrison settled into his chair and studied Sarah's face. "You seem calm for someone who's about to face down half the snipers in NATO. Should I be nervous?" "Most people would be. There's a lot of pride on the line out there. Some of these guys have been talking about this competition for months." Sarah took a sip of her coffee. "Competition is just control practice. The fundamentals don't change whether you're on a range or in the field." "True, but the pressure does." Before Sarah could respond, Major Thompson's voice cut through the mess hall noise. "Attention! All participants report to Range Alpha in 15 minutes. Marksmanship competition begins at 0800 hours. The response was immediate, chairs scraping, conversations ending, soldiers moving with purpose toward the exit. Sarah finished her coffee and gathered her gear, feeling the familiar pre-mission calm settling over her like a comfortable blanket. Range Alpha was an impressive facility, with firing positions extending from 200 to 1,200 meters. Electronic targets at each distance could provide instant feedback, while human spotters with high-powered scopes would verify results. Bleachers had been set up for observers, and Sarah noticed that word had spread beyond the exercise participants. Support staff, instructors, and even some officers who weren't directly involved had gathered to watch. "Ladies and gentlemen," Major Thompson announced, standing at the center of the firing line, "today's competition will consist of 3 phases. Phase 1, precision shooting at known distances. Phase 2, unknown distance engagement. Phase 3, time precision under stress." He gestured to a table displaying various weapons. "You may use your personal weapon or select from our available systems. Each phase will be scored independently, with points awarded for accuracy and time." Sarah moved to collect her custom M24, running her hands over the familiar contours of the stock and barrel. The weapon felt like an extension of her body, every adjustment and modification tailored to her exact specifications. "Impressive rifle," came a voice behind her. She turned to see a tall, blonde woman in French uniform, Captain Dubois, if she remembered correctly. "Thank you. Custom work? Some modifications, yes." Dubois nodded appreciatively. "I respect a professional who understands her tools. Good luck today." The exchange was brief, but friendly, a welcome contrast to the tension radiating from other participants. Sarah noticed Weber checking his own rifle nearby, occasionally shooting glances in her direction. "First phase begins in 5 minutes, Thompson announced. "Participants will engage targets at 200, 400, 600, 800, and 1,000 meters. 5 rounds at each distance. You will have 2 minutes per distance for a total of 10 minutes. Points awarded based on group size and proximity to bullseye." Sarah moved to her assigned firing position, number 7 on the line. To her left was Morrison, to her right a Norwegian soldier she hadn't met. She began her pre-firing routine, adjusting her position, checking wind conditions, settling her breathing. The range fell silent, except for the whisper of wind through the target frames. Sarah felt the world narrow to the essential elements: rifle, target, wind, breathing. Her mind automatically calculated the factors that would affect each shot: temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, the slight crosswind coming from the southeast. Phase 1 commenced firing. The first target was at 200 meters, almost insultingly close for shooters of this caliber. Sarah settled into her position, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with familiar authority. Through her scope, she could see the bullet hole appear exactly where she'd aimed, dead center of the bullseye. 4 more rounds followed in quick succession, each one grouped tightly in the center of the target. She could hear other rifles firing around her, the rhythm of experienced marksmen at work, but her focus remained absolute. 200 meters, ceasefire. Transition to 400 meters. The routine continued through each distance. At 400 meters, her group measured less than an inch. At 600 meters, barely 2 inches despite the increasing wind. The 800-meter target presented more challenge, but her 5 shots still clustered within a 4-inch circle. At 1,000 meters, the real test began. At this distance, small errors in calculation or technique became magnified dramatically. The wind had picked up, and she could see other shooters struggling with their adjustments. Sarah took her time with the first shot, reading the wind carefully, adjusting for the increased bullet drop. The shot felt perfect as it left the barrel. Through her scope, she watched the bullet impact just slightly left of center. Wind correction needed. She made a minute adjustment to her scope and fired again. This time, the bullet struck exactly where she'd aimed. 3 more shots followed, each one carefully placed, each one accounting for the subtle changes in wind and light. 1,000 meters, ceasefire. Phase 1 complete. Sarah saved her rifle and sat back on her heels, finally allowing herself to look around. Other shooters were examining their targets through spotting scopes, some with satisfaction, others with obvious frustration. Weber was arguing with a range officer about wind conditions, gesturing angrily at his target. "Impressive shooting," Morrison said quietly. "I haven't seen groups that tight since sniper school." The electronic scoring system was already calculating results, but Sarah could see the physical targets being examined by range officers. Her groups at each distance were noticeably tighter than most others on the line. Phase 1 results, Thompson announced, reading from a tablet. First place, Captain Martinez, United States, 497 out of 500 possible points. Second place, Captain Dubois, France, 491 points. Third place, Lieutenant Hansen, Denmark, 487 points. A murmur ran through the observers. Weber's face darkened as his name was announced in 8th place with 451 points. Phase 2 will begin in 15 minutes, Thompson continued. Unknown distance engagement. Targets will be presented at random ranges between 300 and 1,200 meters. Participants must estimate distance and engage without range-finding equipment. This was where experience truly mattered. Estimating range accurately required years of practice, an intuitive understanding of how targets appeared at different distances. Sarah had learned this skill the hard way, in combat situations where mistakes meant lives lost. The targets for Phase 2 were life-size silhouettes placed at unmarked distances throughout the range complex. Each shooter would engage 10 targets in sequence, with points awarded for both accuracy and speed of engagement. Target 1, front and center, came a command. Sarah raised her rifle and immediately began her range estimation process. The silhouette appeared to be a standard NATO E-type target, and based on its apparent size through her scope, she estimated the distance at approximately 750 meters. The wind was still coming from the southeast, but lighter now. She made her calculations quickly, but carefully adjusted her scope, controlled her breathing, and fired. The target dropped immediately, indicating a hit in the vital zone. Target 2, left flank. This one was closer, maybe 500 meters. The routine repeated, estimate, calculate, adjust, fire. Another hit. The phase continued through all 10 targets. Some were partially concealed behind cover, others presented at odd angles. One target appeared at what seemed like maximum range, requiring her to use every bit of her training to make the shot count. When the phase ended, Sarah felt confident, but not certain. Unknown distance shooting was always a challenge, and even small errors in range estimation could result in misses. Phase 2 results, Thompson announced after a brief delay. First place, Captain Martinez, United States, 9 hits out of 10 engagements. Average time per shot 14 seconds. Second place, Captain Morrison, Canada, 8 hits, average time 18 seconds. Third place, Captain Dubois, France, 7 hits, average time 16 seconds. The murmur from the observers was louder this time. 9 hits out of 10 at unknown ranges was exceptional shooting by any standard. Sarah noticed several officers in the bleachers taking notes, and a few she didn't recognize wearing uniforms without country insignia. Weber's performance had improved in Phase 2. 6 hits earned him 5th place, but his expression remained dark. He was speaking rapidly to his companions in German, his gestures becoming more animated. Phase 3, Thompson announced, time precision under stress. This phase simulates combat conditions. Targets will appear randomly for limited exposure times. Background noise will simulate battlefield conditions. Each participant will have 5 minutes to engage as many targets as possible. This was the phase Sarah had been anticipating. Combat shooting was different from range precision. It required the ability to make accurate shots quickly, under pressure, while processing multiple sensory inputs. The range crew began setting up additional equipment. Speakers were positioned around the firing line, and she could see technicians preparing what looked like smoke machines. Multiple target systems were activated, creating a complex environment that would present challenges throughout the shooting area. Captain Martinez, Thompson called. As current leader, you'll shoot last. Captain Weber, you're first up. Sarah watched as Weber took his position. The speakers came alive with the sounds of battle. Explosions, gunfire, shouting voices. Smoke began drifting across the range, obscuring some target areas. Targets began appearing at random intervals, visible for only a few seconds before disappearing. Weber fired rapidly, tried to engage as many targets as possible. She could see him struggling with the chaotic environment, his shots becoming less precise as the stress mounted. When his 5 minutes ended, he'd engaged 12 targets with 6 confirmed hits. Other shooters followed, each dealing with the same challenging conditions. Morrison performed well, hitting 8 of 11 targets. Dubois managed 7 hits from 10 attempts. The Norwegian soldier, Hansen, surprised everyone by hitting 9 of 12 targets with remarkably fast target acquisition. Finally, it was Sarah's turn. She settled into her firing position as the chaos began around her. The noise was overwhelming at first, explosions, gunfire, voices shouting in multiple languages. Smoke drifted across her field of view, and she could smell the acrid scent of battlefield simulation. But something interesting happened as she settled into the familiar rhythm of combat shooting. Instead of being distracted by the chaos, she felt more focused. The sound became background noise, the smoke just another environmental factor to account for. This wasn't simulation for her, it was memory. The first target appeared at her 2 o'clock, 400 meters out. She acquired it, fired, and watched it drop. Her movements were fluid, automatic, the result of countless hours of training and real-world application. Target after target appeared and fell. She worked methodically through the range, engaging threats as they presented themselves, prioritizing based on distance and exposure time. Her breathing remained controlled, her movements economical. When the timer sounded, ending her 5 minutes, Sarah lowered her rifle and safed the weapon. The range fell silent except for the gradually diminishing battlefield sounds from the speakers. Scoring Phase 3, Thompson announced. The wait seemed longer this time, perhaps because the stakes fell higher. Sarah could see range officers moving throughout the complex, checking targets, consulting tablets, making notes. Phase 3 results, Thompson finally announced. Captain Martinez, United States, 15 hits from 16 engagements. Average time per shot, 18 seconds. The silence that followed was profound. 15 hits from 16 targets in a 5-minute combat simulation was extraordinary shooting. Sarah could see observers in the bleachers leaning forward, discussing what they'd witnessed. Overall competition results, Thompson continued. First place, Captain Martinez, United States. Second place, Captain Dubois, France. Third place, Lieutenant Hansen, Denmark. The applause was respectful, but subdued. Sarah accepted congratulations from several participants, including Morrison and Du Bois. But she noticed Weber and his group had moved away from the main gathering, their expressions dark. "Impressive shooting, Captain," came a new voice. Sarah turned to see a man in an unmarked uniform approaching. He was tall, lean, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. "Colonel Richards, Special Operations Command." "Thank you, sir. Walk with me." They moved away from the main group, toward a quieter area of the range. "Tell me about Kandahar," Richards said without preamble. Sarah glanced at him sharply. "That's classified, sir." "Not for me, it isn't. I read the after-action reports. Impressive work. But I'm more interested in what those reports didn't say." They walked in silence for a moment before Sarah spoke. "The reports covered the essential facts." "The essential facts, yes. But not the context. Not what it took to make that shot under those conditions. Not what happened afterward." Sarah stopped walking and faced him directly. "With respect, sir, what is this about?" Richard smiled. "Direct. I like that. It's about opportunity, Captain. There are missions coming up that require someone with your particular skills and discretion. I'm already assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment. Assignments can be changed, especially for the right mission." Before Sarah could respond, they were interrupted by approaching voices. Weber and two other soldiers were walking toward them, their expressions hostile. "Captain Martinez," Weber called out. "Quite a performance today." "Thank you." Of course, range shooting is one thing. Combat is another entirely. Richards stepped forward slightly. "Sergeant Weber, isn't it? I believe your unit has evening training scheduled." Weber's eyes moved to Richards, taking in the unmarked uniform and obvious authority. "Yes, sir. We were just congratulating the captain on her shooting." "I'm sure you were. Perhaps you should attend to your training." Weber's jaw tightened, but he couldn't challenge a direct suggestion from a superior officer. "Yes, sir." He turned to Sarah. "Perhaps we'll have a chance to compare combat experience sometime, Captain." After Weber and his companions left, Richards turned back to Sarah. "You're going to have problems with that one. I can handle Sergeant Weber." "I'm sure you can. But that's not what concerns me." Richards paused, studying her face. "Tell me about your tattoo." Sarah felt her blood turn cold. Very few people knew about the Ghost Hawk tattoo, and even fewer understood what it represented. "I don't know what you're referring to, sir." "Operation Ghost Hawk. Classified mission 2 years ago. You were part of a team that didn't officially exist, completing an objective that officially never happened." The pieces began falling into place. Richards wasn't just a colonel. He was connected to the Black Operations side of Special Operations Command, the side that dealt with missions too sensitive for normal channels. "I can neither confirm nor deny," Sarah began. "Captain, relax. I'm not fishing for classified information. I'm offering you a chance to use your skills in service of something important." "What kind of mission?" "The kind that requires someone who can make impossible shots under impossible conditions. The kind that requires someone who's already proven they can operate in the gray areas where normal rules don't apply." Sarah felt the familiar weight of decision. Every major turning point in her military career had come with choices like this, moments where she had to decide how far she was willing to go in service of the mission. "I need to know more details." "Of course. But first, you need to complete this exercise. Prove that today wasn't a fluke. Show these soldiers exactly what American training and determination can accomplish. And if I'm not interested in your mission," Richard smiled, "then you go back to your unit with my highest recommendation and the knowledge that you've made your country proud. But somehow, I don't think that's going to be the case." As he walked away, Sarah felt the familiar sensation of standing at a crossroads. She'd built her career on taking calculated risks, on pushing beyond what others thought possible. Now she was being offered another chance to do exactly that. The sound of her name being called interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Kowalski approaching with an expression of pure excitement. "Captain, that was incredible. I've never seen shooting like that, not even from our best instructors." "It was a good day," Sarah replied modestly. "A good day? You just outshot some of the best snipers in NATO by margins that shouldn't be possible." Word is already spreading through the entire facility. As they walked back toward the main complex, Sarah could feel the weight of changed perceptions. Soldiers who had ignored or dismissed her that morning now watched her with obvious respect. Conversations paused as she passed, then resumed in excited whispers. But she also noticed Weber's group watching her with undisguised hostility. Whatever challenge had been brewing before was now open warfare. Her performance had humiliated Weber in front of his peers and superiors, and men like Weber didn't forgive that kind of humiliation easily. "Captain," Kowalski said as they reached the building, "can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead." "The rumor about the tattoo. Is it true? Do you really have a Ghost Hawk tattoo?" Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Kowalski had been nothing but supportive since her arrival, and his admiration seemed genuine rather than calculated. Without speaking, she rolled up her sleeve slightly, revealing the edge of the intricate tattoo on her upper arm. The Ghost Hawk was beautifully rendered in black and gray ink, a stylized bird of prey with wings spread wide, talons extended. But it was the details that made it significant. The small skull worked into the design, the crossed rifles, the coordinates that marked a place most people had never heard of. Kowalski's eyes widened. "It's real. The Ghost Hawk is real. And now you understand why some conversations are classified." He nodded, clearly understanding the significance of what he'd been shown. "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely." As they parted ways, Sarah realized that her time of operating in relative anonymity was over. Word would spread quickly through the military community, and soon everyone would know exactly who she was and what she represented. The question now was whether she was ready for what came next. Because if her instincts were correct, the shooting competition was just the beginning. The real test, whatever mission Richards was alluding to, was still to come. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she had the unsettling feeling that Weber and his hostility were going to be the least of her problems. 3 days had passed since the shooting competition, and the dynamic at the NATO facility had shifted dramatically. Where Sarah had once moved through the compound as an object of curiosity or skepticism, she now commanded genuine respect from most participants. Conversations stopped when she approached, not from awkwardness, but from deference. Soldiers who had never spoken to her before began seeking her advice on shooting techniques and tactical questions. But not everyone was pleased with her newfound status. Weber's hostility had only intensified, and he'd gathered a small group of like-minded soldiers who seemed to feed off his resentment. They made no effort to hide their contempt, speaking loudly about special treatment and political correctness whenever Sarah was within earshot. "It's getting worse," Kowalski observed as he joined Sarah for breakfast. "Weber's been spreading stories, questioning whether your performance was legitimate." Sarah cut into her eggs with deliberate precision. "What kind of stories?" "He's suggesting the competition was rigged. Says there's no way someone could shoot that accurately under stress without advanced knowledge of the target locations. And people believe that. Some do. Enough to cause problems, anyway." Sarah sighed. She'd hoped the shooting competition would settle questions about her capabilities, but instead it seemed to have created new ones. Some soldiers couldn't accept that a woman had outperformed them so decisively, so they invented explanations that preserved their ego. "There's something else," Kowalski continued, lowering his voice. "Weber's been asking questions about your background, specifically about classified missions. That was more concerning. Weber might be an ass, but he wasn't stupid. If he was digging into classified operations, he might stumble onto information that could compromise ongoing missions or expose assets still in the field." "What kind of questions?" "He's been talking to anyone who will listen, trying to piece together your deployment history. He knows about Afghanistan, and he's heard rumors about other missions. Someone told him about the Ghost Hawk tattoo." Sarah's jaw tightened. The tattoo was supposed to be a closely guarded secret, known only to a select few within the special operations community. If Weber was spreading that information around, it could create serious security problems. "Who told him?" "I don't know. But word is he's planning something for today's exercise." Today's training was scheduled to be urban warfare simulation, close-quarters combat in a mock city environment. It was designed to test small unit tactics, communication, and decision-making under stress. Sarah had been assigned to lead a mixed team of soldiers from different countries. As they finished breakfast, Major Thompson appeared at their table. Captain Martinez, a word. They moved to a quieter corner of the mess hall. I've heard there might be some tension regarding your team assignment for today's exercise, Thompson said carefully. What kind of tension? Some participants have expressed concerns about the team composition, specifically about having a female team leader in a combat simulation. Sarah felt her patience wearing thin. And what did you tell them? I told them that team assignments are based on demonstrated competence, not gender. Your performance over the past 3 days has been exemplary. Thank you, sir. However, Thompson continued, I want you to be aware that today's exercise will be closely observed. There are several senior officers in attendance, including some who weren't originally scheduled to be here. Including Colonel Richards? Thompson raised an eyebrow. So you've met him? Yes, he'll be observing, along with several others who have taken an interest in this exercise. After Thompson left, Sarah returned to her room to prepare for the day's training. She checked her equipment carefully: body armor, communications gear, weapons, and ammunition. Everything had to be perfect because she knew she'd be under intense scrutiny. A knock on her door interrupted her preparations. Come in. Captain Du Bois entered, her expression serious. Sarah, we need to talk. What's wrong? I've been hearing things. Weber and his friends are planning something for today's exercise. Something to embarrass you or make you look incompetent. Sarah stopped what she was doing and gave Du Bois her full attention. What kind of something? I'm not sure exactly. But they've been meeting privately, going over the exercise scenario, talking about ways to exploit weaknesses in mixed-gender teams. They're planning to use the exercise rules against you somehow. Do you have specifics? No, but I know Weber. He's vindictive, and he doesn't forgive being shown up. Whatever he's planning, it won't be fair or honest. Sarah appreciated the warning, but it didn't surprise her. She'd dealt with men like Weber throughout her military career, soldiers who couldn't accept that their assumptions about female capabilities were wrong. I can handle Weber. I'm sure you can. But be careful. He's not just trying to prove a point anymore. He's trying to destroy your reputation. After Du Bois left, Sarah finished her preparations and headed to the briefing room. The urban warfare facility was an impressive setup, a mock city with multi-story buildings, narrow streets, and countless hiding places. The scenario called for teams to clear buildings, rescue hostages, and neutralize threats while minimizing civilian casualties. Team Alpha, Major Thompson announced, reading from his clipboard. Captain Martinez, team leader. Sergeant Weber, Germany. Corporal Hansen, Denmark. Private Kowalski, Poland. Lance Corporal Murphy, Ireland. Sarah felt a cold satisfaction as Weber's name was read. So he managed to get himself assigned to her team. This would be interesting. The briefing continued with scenario details and safety protocols. Each team would be equipped with simulation gear that would register hits and track performance. Live ammunition was replaced with marking rounds that would show impact points, but couldn't cause serious injury. Exercise begins in 30 minutes, Thompson concluded. Team leaders, collect your equipment and prepare your personnel. Sarah gathered her team in a quiet corner of the staging area. Weber arrived last, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes cold with barely contained hostility. All right, Sarah began. The scenario is straightforward. Building-to-building clearing with possible hostile forces and civilian hostages. Our objective is to secure the target building and extract any friendlies we find. She spread out a map of the mock city on a nearby table. We'll approach from the south, use covering fire, and movement to advance through the urban terrain. Hansen, you're our explosives expert. If we need breaches, that's your responsibility. Murphy, your comms. Kowalski, you're with me on point. Weber, you'll provide rear security and backup as needed. Weber's expression darkened at being assigned what was essentially the least prominent role. Perhaps we should discuss tactics more thoroughly, he said. Some of us have actual urban combat experience. I'm open to suggestions, Sarah replied evenly. In my experience, female soldiers often struggle with the physical demands of close quarters combat. Perhaps I should take point with you coordinating from a safer position." The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah could see the other team members watching carefully, waiting to see how she'd respond. "Your concerns are noted, Sergeant. However, I'll be taking point. If you're uncomfortable with that arrangement, I can request a team reassignment." Weber's jaw tightened, but he couldn't challenge a direct order from his team leader without crossing into insubordination. "No, Captain. I'll follow orders." "Good. Any other questions or concerns?" There were none, though Sarah could see Weber exchanging glances with soldiers on other teams. Whatever he was planning, he was still committed to it. They moved to the starting position and waited for the exercise to begin. Sarah used the time to study the terrain ahead, identifying potential cover points, danger areas, and approach routes. The mock city was well designed, with realistic details that would make the simulation challenging. "Exercise commence," came the command over the radio. Team Alpha moved out immediately, with Sarah taking point as planned. The urban environment was disorienting at first. Narrow streets, multiple levels, countless windows, and doorways where threats could hide. But Sarah's training kicked in automatically, her movements fluid and controlled. They reached the first building without incident. Sarah signaled for the team to take positions around the entrance while she checked for signs of activity inside. The building appeared empty, but she knew that could change quickly. Breaching, she whispered in her radio, then kicked in the door. The interior was a maze of rooms and corridors, perfect for ambushes. Sarah moved carefully, weapon ready, eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Behind her, she could hear the rest of the team following in proper formation. The first floor was clear, but as they moved toward the stairwell, Sarah heard the distinctive sound of movement above. Multiple footsteps, trying to be quiet but not quite succeeding. She signaled the team to halt and listen. The sounds continued. Definitely multiple hostiles on the second floor, possibly positioned to defend the stairwell. "Hansen," Sarah whispered, "can you get us an alternate route to the second floor?" The Danish corporal studied the building layout. "There's a fire escape on the east side. I could place a charge on the exterior wall, create a new entrance." "Do it." "Weber, Murphy, you're with Hansen. Kowalski, and I will create a distraction at the main stairwell." It was a sound tactical plan, but Sarah noticed Weber's expression showed disagreement. "Perhaps we should stick together," he suggested. "Splitting the team could be dangerous." "The plan stands," Sarah replied firmly. What happened next unfolded in seconds, but felt like slow motion. As Hansen and the others moved toward the exterior wall, Sarah and Kowalski approached the stairwell. The sound from above had stopped, which was either very good or very bad. Sarah was halfway up the stairs when she heard Weber's voice behind her, loud enough to carry throughout the building. "Contact! Multiple hostiles, second floor." The shout was obviously intended to alert any exercise hostiles to their position, ruining any element of surprise. But it also revealed Weber's plan. He was sabotaging the mission to make Sarah look incompetent. The response was immediate. Exercise hostiles appeared at the top of the stairwell, firing marking rounds down at Sarah and Kowalski. In a real combat situation, they would have been killed instantly. But Sarah had spent years in real combat situations, where mistakes meant death and adaptation meant survival. Instead of retreating or panicking, she did something that surprised everyone, including herself. She charged up the stairs. The move was so unexpected that the exercise hostiles hesitated for a crucial moment. Sarah reached the second floor landing and engaged the nearest threat at point-blank range, her marking rounds hitting center mass. Kowalski was right behind her, providing covering fire as she advanced. The mock firefight lasted less than 30 seconds, but when it ended, Sarah's team had successfully cleared the second floor despite Weber's attempt at sabotage. "Building secure," Sarah reported over the radio, breathing heavily but in control. Hansen's voice crackled back. "Breach successful on our end. No hostiles in the rear rooms." As the team regrouped, Sarah could see Weber's frustrated expression. His sabotage had failed, and worse, it had been witnessed by the other team members. "Interesting tactics, Captain," Weber said, his tone carefully neutral. Very aggressive. Sometimes aggression is the right response to tactical surprise. They continued through the urban terrain, clearing building after building. Weber continued to question her choices and occasionally accidentally compromised their positions, but Sarah compensated for his interference without making it obvious. By the time they reached the target building, a three-story structure where hostages were supposedly being held, Sarah's team had the best time and accuracy rating of any group in exercise. "This is the big test," Kowalski said quietly as they studied the target building. "Intelligence says there are 4 hostages, unknown number of hostiles." Sarah nodded, studying the structure carefully. The building had multiple entrances, numerous windows, and what appeared to be a rooftop access. It was designed to be challenging, requiring careful coordination and precise execution. Multiple entry points, she decided. "Hansen, I want charges on the north and south entrances. Time to detonate simultaneously. Weber and Murphy, you'll breach from the north. Kowalski and I will take the south. Hostiles will expect us to come from the front, so we'll hit them from 2 sides at once." It was another solid plan, but Sarah could see Weber preparing to object again. Before he could speak, however, a new voice cut through their conversation. "Interesting approach, Captain." Sarah turned to see Colonel Richards approaching, flanked by 2 other officers she didn't recognize. All 3 were wearing the electronic monitoring gear that would let them observe the exercise in real time. "Sir," Sarah acknowledged, "don't mind us. Carry on with your mission." The presence of senior officers changed the dynamic immediately. Weber couldn't openly sabotage the mission with colonels watching, and the rest of the team snapped to attention with increased focus. "Execute," Sarah ordered. The dual breach went perfectly. Hansen's charges detonated simultaneously, creating confusion among the exercise hostiles as they tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. Sarah and Kowalski cleared their section of the building methodically, while Weber and Murphy did the same from the north. "Hostage secured. First floor," Murphy reported. "2 more hostages, second floor," Kowalski added. The final hostage was on the 3rd floor, in what appeared to be the most heavily defended position. Sarah made the decision to lead the assault personally, leaving Weber to coordinate from below. The 3rd floor firefight was intense, but brief. Sarah used every trick she'd learned in years of real combat, moving with precision and confidence that left no doubt about her capabilities. "All hostages secured," she reported as the exercise ended. "Building clear." The debriefing afterward was conducted in front of the assembled participants and observers. Major Thompson reviewed each team's performance, but it was clear that Team Alpha had dominated the exercise. "Exceptional performance," Thompson concluded. "Textbook urban warfare tactics, adapted excellently to changing conditions." Team Alpha completed the mission in the shortest time with 0 casualties and all objectives achieved. The applause was genuine, but Sarah noticed Weber's expression was darker than ever. His attempts at sabotage had not only failed, but had made his own incompetence obvious to everyone present. After the formal debriefing, Colonel Richards approached Sarah again. "Walk with me, Captain." They moved away from the main group toward a quieter area of the facility. "Impressive work today," Richards said, "especially considering the challenges you faced." "Thank you, sir. I'm referring specifically to Sergeant Weber's behavior. We were monitoring all radio traffic during the exercise." Sarah chose her words carefully. "Sergeant Weber and I have different approaches to tactical situations. That's a diplomatic way of putting it." Richard stopped walking and turned to face her. "Let me be direct, Captain. Weber's behavior today crossed the line from disagreement into active sabotage. In a real combat situation, his actions could have gotten people killed." "What are you suggesting, sir?" "I'm suggesting that your ability to overcome that kind of interference while still completing the mission successfully demonstrates exactly the kind of leadership we need for special operations." They walked in silence for a moment before Richard spoke again. "There's a mission briefing tonight. 2,000 hours, Building A, Room 12. I'd like you to attend." "What kind of mission?" The kind where failure isn't an option and second chances don't exist. The kind where you'll need every skill you've demonstrated here and probably a few more. And if I'm not interested, then you finish the exercise, return to your unit, and continue being an exceptional conventional soldier. But somehow, I don't think that's going to satisfy someone with your capabilities. As Richards walked away, Sarah felt the familiar weight of decision. She'd come to this exercise to prove herself among international peers. She'd accomplished that goal, but now she was being offered something more, something that would push her beyond anything she'd done before. The question was whether she was ready for whatever came next. Because something told her that today's urban warfare exercise had been child's play compared to what Colonel Richards had in mind. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered if Weber's hostility was about to become the least of her problems. The hours between Richards' invitation and the briefing passed slowly. Sarah spent the time maintaining her equipment and trying to process what was happening. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a decorated but relatively conventional soldier. Now, she was apparently being recruited for something that required the kind of security clearance that came with dire consequences for disclosure. At 1945 hours, she made her way to Building A. The structure was different from the other facilities on the compound. Older, more heavily secured, with electronic locks and camera surveillance that spoke of serious classification levels. Room 12 was on the second floor, at the end of a corridor that seemed designed to discourage casual visitors. Sarah knocked on the door and heard Richard's voice telling her to enter. The room was configured as a secure briefing facility, with electronic countermeasure equipment visible along the walls and windows that had been blacked out completely. 3 people were already present. Colonel Richards, a woman in civilian clothes who radiated intelligence officer, and a man in Navy uniform with SEAL insignia. Captain Martinez, Richards said, standing as she entered. Thank you for coming. Please have a seat. Sarah chose a chair that gave her a clear view of all exits, a habit that had become second nature during years of deployment in hostile territory. Before we begin, Richards continued, I need to confirm your security clearance. You currently hold secret clearance with selected compartmented information access, correct? Yes, sir. For this briefing, you'll need to sign additional security agreements. He slid a folder across the table. I want to be clear. Once you read these documents and hear this briefing, you'll be bound by security obligations that extend far beyond your current clearance level. Sarah opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. The classification levels were higher than anything she'd encountered before, and the penalties for disclosure were severe. She'd seen similar agreements during the Ghost Hawk operation, but these were even more restrictive. What happens if I decide not to sign? Then you leave this room with no knowledge of why you were invited, and you complete the exercise as planned. No harm, no consequences. And if I do sign, the woman in civilian clothes spoke for the first time. Then you learn about an opportunity to serve your country in ways that will never be officially acknowledged, but could prevent thousands of casualties. Sarah studied the 3 faces across from her. These weren't people who dealt in exaggeration or dramatic appeals. If they said thousands of lives were at stake, they meant it literally. She signed the documents. Richards collected the papers and locked them in a secure case. Captain, meet Dr. Sarah Chun, CIA Operations Directorate, and Commander Mike Torres, SEAL Team 6. The introductions were brief and professional, but Sarah noticed both Chun and Torres studying her with the kind of careful attention that suggested they'd already reviewed her file extensively. Let me start with context, Richards said, activating a large display screen. 3 days ago, satellite intelligence identified unusual activity at a facility in the Caucasus Mountains. The facility is officially a research station studying seismic activity. Unofficially, we believe it's being used to develop a new type of weapon system. The screen showed satellite images of a remote mountain complex. Even from orbit, Sarah could see the extensive security measures, guard towers, perimeter fencing, and what appeared to be surface-to-air missile installations. The weapon system, Dr. Chun continued, appears to be based on directed energy technology. Think of it as a focused electromagnetic pulse that can disable electronic systems at extreme range. In the wrong hands, this technology could shut down power grids, disable aircraft, or cripple entire military formations. The problem, Commander Torres added, is that the facility is being operated by a joint venture between Russian organized crime and radical elements from several Middle Eastern groups. They're planning to auction the technology to the highest bidder. Sarah studied the images carefully. What kind of security are we looking at? Approximately 40 personnel, Richards replied. Mix of Russian mercenaries and foreign nationals. They're well-armed and professionally trained, but they're not expecting an assault. The facility's location was chosen for secrecy, not defensibility. What's the mission? Chun leaned forward. 3 objectives. First, secure or destroy the weapon technology. Second, extract a scientist who's being held against his will. Dr. Petrov, the technology's primary developer. Third, eliminate the leadership of the criminal organization before they can relocate their operations. Sarah felt the familiar weight of a complex mission briefing. Why not use conventional special forces? SEAL Team 6 could handle this. Torres smiled grimly. Under normal circumstances, yes. But there's a complication. The facility is located in a region claimed by both Russia and Georgia. Any large-scale military operation could trigger an international incident. We need surgical precision, a small team that can get in, accomplish the objectives, and get out without leaving evidence of American involvement. How small a team? 3 people, Richards said. A tech specialist to handle the weapon system, a close-quarters combat expert for facility penetration, and a precision marksman for overwatch and target elimination. Sarah understood immediately why she was sitting in this room. The marksman position. The facility has several buildings spread across a mountain valley. External security relies heavily on watchtowers and roving patrols. Someone needs to provide overwatch for the team and eliminate specific targets from concealed positions. What kind of ranges are we talking about? Chun consulted her notes. Primary observation post would be approximately 1,200 meters from a main facility. Secondary positions at 800 and 1,500 meters, depending on tactical requirements. Sarah nodded. Those were challenging but manageable distances, well within her demonstrated capabilities. There's one more factor, Richards continued. The mission timeline is extremely compressed. Intelligence indicates the auction will take place in 6 days. We need to insert complete objectives and extract within a 72-hour window. Where would insertion take place? Torres activated a new set of images showing mountainous terrain surrounding the facility. Helicopter insertion 12 kilometers from target. Night operation. The team would move overland to establish positions, conduct surveillance, and execute when conditions are optimal. Sarah studied the terrain maps carefully. The area was rugged, with limited vegetation and steep approaches to the facility. It would require careful route planning and exceptional physical conditioning. What about extraction? Same helicopter, different location. There's a clearing 8 kilometers southeast of the facility that can accommodate a stealth helicopter for pickup. And if the helicopter is compromised, alternate extraction by vehicle to the Georgian border, then air transport from Tbilisi. The briefing continued for another hour, covering intelligence estimates, equipment requirements, and operational security procedures. Sarah found herself impressed by the thoroughness of the planning and the quality of the intelligence, but she also recognized the enormous risks involved. Questions? Richards asked as the formal briefing concluded. Sarah had dozens of questions, but she focused on the most critical ones. Who are the other team members? Dr. Jennifer Walsh, cyber warfare specialist with extensive field experience. Master Sergeant Carlos Ramirez, Delta Force, expert in facility penetration and close quarters combat. Both have worked similar missions and hold the appropriate clearances. When would training begin? Tomorrow. If you accept the mission, you'll be transferred immediately to a secure facility for mission-specific training and final planning. And if the mission fails? Chen's expression was grim. Then, a very dangerous technology enters the global black market, and we can expect to see American aircraft falling from the sky within months. The room fell silent as Sarah considered everything she'd heard. This was exactly the kind of mission she'd trained for her entire career, but it was also the most dangerous assignment she'd ever been offered. "I need to ask," she said finally. "Why me?" JSOC has dozens of qualified snipers who could handle this mission. "Because," Richards replied, "this mission requires someone who can make impossible shots under impossible conditions. Someone who's already proven they can operate in classified environments and maintain operational security. Someone who won't break under pressure when everything goes wrong. And you think I'm that person? I think you've already proven you're that person. Operation Ghost Hawk wasn't a fluke, Captain. It was a demonstration of capabilities that very few people possess." Sarah felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. Accepting this mission would change her life permanently. Win or lose, she'd never be the same person who'd arrived at this NATO facility 2 weeks ago. "How long do I have to decide?" "Until 0600 tomorrow morning. After that, we launch final preparations with or without you." As the meeting broke up, Chen approached Sarah privately. "Can I give you some advice?" "Please. I've been working covert operations for 15 years. I've seen dozens of soldiers face decisions like this. The ones who succeed are the ones who trust their training and their instincts. Don't overthink it. And the ones who don't succeed? They're usually the ones who either weren't ready for the mission or convinced themselves they weren't ready when they actually were." After leaving the briefing, Sarah walked through the compound in the gathering darkness. The NATO facility seemed almost surreal now, a playground for soldiers compared to what she'd just been offered. She found herself at the shooting range where her reputation had been established just days earlier. The targets were still in place, silent sentinels in the moonlight. She thought about the shots she'd made, the precision required, the confidence she'd felt when everything came together perfectly. Couldn't sleep either. Sarah turned to see Commander Torres approaching. He moved with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to operating in dangerous environments. "Just thinking about the mission, about whether I'm the right person for it." Torres was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Can I tell you about my first classified operation?" Sarah nodded. "I was 26, been a SEAL for 4 years. Command offered me a slot on a mission that officially didn't exist. Foreign intelligence asset extraction, high risk, no backup. I spent 3 days convincing myself I wasn't ready. Did you take it? Eventually. And you know what I learned? The doubt never goes away completely. Even now, 15 years and dozens of operations later, I still wonder if I'm the right person for each mission. But that doubt, it's not weakness. It's what keeps you sharp." They walked back toward the main complex together. "One more thing," Torres said as they reached the barracks. "Whatever you decide, make sure you're deciding based on what you can live with, not what you're afraid of." Back in her room, Sarah lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling. Her mind kept returning to the mission briefings, to the satellite images, to the implications of failure. But she also thought about the shooting competition, about the urban warfare exercise, about every challenge she'd faced and overcome. Somewhere around midnight, she realized she'd already made her decision. She'd made it the moment Richards first approached her, maybe even before that. Everything since then had just been her mind catching up to what her instincts already knew. She was going to take the mission. The next morning, she found Richards in the mess hall before dawn. "I'm in," she said simply. He nodded as if he'd never doubted her decision. "Transport leaves in 2 hours. Pack light. You'll be issued mission-specific gear at the training facility." "Sir, there's one thing I need to know." "What's that?" "If this goes wrong, if we're captured or killed, what happens to the people back here? To soldiers like Kowalski who supported me?" Richard's expression softened slightly. "They continue their careers with no knowledge of your true mission. The cover story is that you were transferred for advanced training. Nothing comes back on them." As Sarah packed her gear, she thought about the NATO exercise that had brought her here. It had started as an opportunity to prove herself among international peers, but It had become something much more significant. She discovered capabilities she hadn't known she possessed and attracted attention from people who operated in shadows she'd only glimpsed before. Kowalski appeared at her door as she finished packing. "Captain, word is you're being transferred." "That's right. Can I ask where?" Sarah smiled. "Somewhere I can continue learning new skills." "Well, for what it's worth, working with you this past week has been the highlight of my military career. You've shown us all what's possible with dedication and skill." After Kowalski left, Sarah took one last look around the room that had been home for the past 2 weeks. The NATO facility had been a stepping stone, a place where her abilities had been tested and confirmed. Now it was time for the real test. As she walked toward the transport that would take her to her new assignment, Sarah caught sight of Weber watching from a distance. His expression was still hostile, but there was something else now, a grudging respect that he couldn't quite hide. She'd proven everything she'd come here to prove. Now it was time to discover what came next. The helicopter rose into the morning sky, carrying her away from the NATO facility and toward whatever waited at the classified training site. Sarah watched the compound shrink below her and felt the familiar sensation of crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. But for the first time in weeks, she felt completely certain she was exactly where she belonged. The classified training facility was unlike anything Sarah had seen before. Hidden in the mountains of Colorado, it appeared to be a legitimate corporate retreat center from the outside. But beneath the facade of conference rooms and administrative offices lay one of the most advanced special operations training centers in the world. Dr. Jennifer Walsh proved to be exactly what Sarah had expected from the briefing: brilliant, focused, and completely unimpressed by rank or reputation. At 32, she'd spent 8 years developing cyber warfare tools for the intelligence community and for years applying them in field operations. Her handshake was firm, her eyes sharp, and her first question was entirely practical. "What's your experience with electronic surveillance equipment?" "Standard military systems," Sarah replied. "Why?" "Because the facility we're hitting has state-of-the-art security. I'll need to hack their systems while you provide overwatch. That means understanding how electronic countermeasures might affect your equipment." Master Sergeant Carlos Ramirez was a different story entirely. 15 years in special operations had left him with the kind of calm confidence that came from surviving situations where others hadn't. He moved with economic precision, spoke only when necessary, and radiated competence from every gesture. "Heard about your shooting at the NATO exercise," he said during their first team meeting. "Impressive numbers." "Thank you. Let's see how those numbers translate to operational conditions." The training began immediately. For the next 3 days, Sarah found herself pushed harder than she'd been since her initial special operations qualification. The difference was that now everything was focused on a specific mission with specific requirements. The mountain range behind the facility had been configured to replicate the target area in the Caucasus. Distances, angles, and environmental conditions had been matched as closely as possible. Sarah spent hours on the replica ranges, practicing the specific shots she'd need to make during the operation. "Target 1, Ramirez called through her earpiece. "Guard tower, northeast corner, 1,247 meters. Sarah's rifle tracked smoothly to the designated position. The target was a human silhouette positioned exactly where intelligence indicated the real guard would be stationed. She calculated wind drift, temperature effects, and the slight upward angle, then squeezed the trigger. "Hit," Walsh confirmed through the spotting scope. "Center mass. Target 2, roving patrol, 800 meters, moving left to right." This shot required leading the target, accounting for movement while maintaining precision. Sarah tracked the moving silhouette, calculated the lead required, and fired.